Well, welcome to today's rant. I'm sitting inside today because it is hot outside. It is blazing hot. And big heat wave hitting the East Coast, Northeast Coast. A lot of people are crying, climate change, global warming. I don't know, I'm 70 years old in a month or so, and I remember heat waves like this when I was a kid, all through my life. To me, if you really have an argument about something, you don't have to make stupid arguments about it. And when you claim that every storm, every fire, everything that's happening is the crisis of climate change, it makes you look ridiculous. These things have gone on from the beginning. But, as I've always said, we need to definitely take care of our environment. We've got to treat this incredible world that God's given to us with the highest respect. And we need to treat every creature, every species, everything. If we're pro-life, we should be pro-all life. No question about that. But, you can read, as I did read on some of my television programs, Prophetic Perspectives, how the Marxists determined way back in the 1920s and 30s in the U.S., when they laid out their strategy for taking over the U.S., a part of that strategy was constantly creating environmental crises that would push people towards a globalist mentality. The only way we can fix this is we've got to go to a one world government. And of course, that's always the push. But that does not negate our taking our own responsibility and doing what is right by this incredible place that God has given us to live. So today the theme was the worst of all poverty. It's kind of connected. Mahatma Gandhi, the founder of modern India, he said that poverty is the worst of all violence. And you know who are the biggest polluters on the planet? The poorest people. You believe, now there are some that, when you fly big jets around just by yourself or whatever, you can be polluting far more, have a far bigger carbon footprint, whatever you want to call it. You can be consuming far more of the world's resources. But in general, places that are impoverished are what are doing the most to destroy their environment. You go to Haiti, there are no trees. They've destroyed the trees. They've cut them down to use them to burn as firewood or whatever. So, China, when it was the most impoverished nation on the earth, mostly because they had over 1 billion people they were trying to take care of, but many reasons for it. The biggest after that was socialism, Marxism. It has done more to impoverish people than any other system, any other government, any other factor in world history. Every country that were socialist and Marxists take over, they can take a beautiful, emerging, wealthy nation like Venezuela and turn it into the disaster that Venezuela is. That happens over and over. Well, you say, well, Cuba survived pretty well. They would not have survived at all if it had not been, supported by the Soviet Union and then China and then Venezuela. Most of Venezuelans' oil, since being taken over by the socialists, has gone to hold up Cuba instead of being sold on the world markets and benefiting their people. There are a lot of things like this, but there's something when you're desperate just to survive. You talk to people that went through the U.S., the Great Depression, the U.S., where every day their main thought was to get food to live. And most Americans have never experienced anything like that. Now, I've talked to very famous Americans who grew up like that, just trying every day to get enough food, not to go to bed hungry at night. It's still a terrible, terrible condition to see people suffer under. And throughout the scriptures, you see that prosperity is a blessing from God on the wise, those who do his will, who serve him, who call on his name. That's one of the benefits. Now, I don't believe ostentatiousness is the blessing. We have many other scriptures that those who want to get rich or go way beyond just seeking wealth and seeking more, that greed is a terrible idol, and it is destructive too. It is very destructive. But where is it that we are, as Paul talked about, being content when we're both abased or abounding? I've had a very blessed life financially. Incredibly blessed. I grew up, I didn't know at the time. I didn't know we were poor. I didn't know we were lower middle class. I thought we were very wealthy when I was a young kid. I thought, how could you need more than this or want more? As I grew, I started seeing people that had totally different conditions in life that we will always have. But after a period of time, I just learned how to do well. And a whole lot of that has to be with just being consistent and intentional about, doing the best work you can, improving your situation through promotions or whatever else, and then through knowledge and study, where I learned business on my own, and or pretty much on my own. But it's where you've got to have that, and I wasn't just trying to get rich, but I was trying to do better. Everybody, especially when you're starting a family, you want to do the best for them. And I think the Lord really cares about the condition that his bride is in. And he wants to do the best by her and his children. And I think any loving father does, any loving husband does. But there's a point where when you're not content, when you've got plenty and you're not content, something's going awry. And believe it or not, more often than not, that leads to poverty. And it leads to violence in many ways. Now, America, free market economics brought more people out of poverty over the last 20 years than all of the rest of history combined. A big part of that was China coming out of poverty. China adopted just a few free market principles, which they added to their communist doctrine and government, but just releasing people being able to own their own property, start their own businesses, very basic free market economics, free enterprise. It was a spectacular, never in history has that many people come out of such deep poverty so fast to such incredible prosperity. Free market works. Socialism doesn't work. It's never worked anywhere. And, one of the things, I've spent a lot of times in Europe. I've spent a lot of times in Scandinavia that I love, one of my favorite parts of the whole earth. Incredible people there. But, they're considered socialist countries. And then I've seen studies that say they're the happiest countries. Now, I've met some very joyful, very happy, extraordinary people there. Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Norway, incredible people, but their joy and their happiness stood out in contrast to the place. Now, you can make a poll, say anything you want it to, by the questions you ask and who you ask. My definition of happiness may not be the same as yours. Mine is having a comfortable chair to do my work in, and the books I want to read, the time to pray and seek the Lord. I've been working very hard to simplify my life since we became empty nesters. I want to get more and more simple, consume less, need less to make it. But that's my devotion, and I could be perfectly happy in the most simple places as long as I have a comfortable place to sit, comfortable place to sleep, enough food, covering. I'm good. I'm good. Just give me my books, and now you can get everything you want off the internet. I am just happy as I can be. But, there are ways that we, I think, can get out of our lane. And, it talks about in Scripture, don't be beguiled or bewitched from the simplicity of devotion to Christ. Studies on happiness, a major one that was done about 20 years ago, concluded that your stuff had nothing to do with your happiness. Now, I would have thought something, give me 1 or 2%. I love my motorcycle, I love these certain things. Certainly they make me happy, but according to their conclusion, it's all about relationships. And they said the simplest people in the world and some of the poorest in the world, but they had enough to eat and for, clothing and housing. If they had the most simple lives, they tended to be the happiest on the earth. And what I found in some of those countries that were considered socialist, I didn't find much joy. I found an unbelievable depression over them. Now, I could make a poll up and probably make those countries seem like the most depressed places on the earth. Maybe that's not true either, but we need to recognize, why do they have the highest suicide rates? Why do some of those nations that other polls say they're the happiest in the world, why do they have the highest suicide rates? I'm just saying. We've got to really be discerning of these things. But what is true happiness? What is true violence? What is doing people harm? And listen, if you witness violence, if you witness somebody being attacked, and you don't do something about it, you don't do whatever you could do to help that person. It says in Scripture, if you know to do good but do not do it, that is sin. That is sin to you. If we don't do what we know we could do to help people, so people all over the world that are under this terrible poverty, if we know what to do and can do it, we must do it to help them. Okay, now there's a lot of places that are under poverty because of warlords who steal all the resources, steal all the food, give it out to the people in a way that they keep the people under their control. Many other things that they make money off of it. There's many terrible things. Well, that's why we went into Mogadishu the first time. If you've seen the movie Black Hawk Down, our friend Jerry Boykin was in that battle, and others. We went there to try to help deal with these warlords and get the food to the people. Things, if you got into a battle and then pulled out right away, when there another day or two, we would have probably done in the warlords who were so destroying those people. And that battle was actually an unbelievable victory for the U.S. Don't want to get into all that, but I understand, dealing with terrorists and things like that. But there's also, when we see real injustice and really cruel, evil people dominating a nation, sometimes if we as a nation can stop that, we need to. I'm just saying. We can't stand by and let everything, we can't intervene in all situations. But I don't think our foreign policy needs to be based just on our selfish interests. We got to look at those first. Sometimes if we can do something, we've got to do it. That's what we did in Grenada. What we did in Panama was a lot to do to try to stop the drug flow into our country and other countries. There's a lot of things we could do. But if we could go after the unnecessary poverty in the world in ways and in places where we can help, I think it's worth doing. I'm just saying. Thank you for listening to today's rant.